What's up, my nerd?
What's up, nerds?
What's up?
Hey, Star Wars fans. Welcome to the Credible Nerds podcast. I'm here with my fellow Mandalorians, my fellow clone scientists,
Ooh.
Blake and Nathan.
Science is cool.
What's up, everybody?
And we're back to talk about Mandalorian Season 3, Chapter 19.
19.
And I forget what it's called.
The convert.
Convert. Because we had the believer, the apostate, and all these religious stages, and now we're at this stage.
Yeah.
So, and there is a lot of religious overtones. I think we brought that up last time. And again, it continues in this episode.
Yeah.
And it starts off with a bang. One of the best openings we've had one of the best, definitely. I don't know if it's the best, but it's definitely entertaining. We start off exactly where we left off in the last episode, where Bo-Katan and Djarin are at the water's edge, or they had just emerged from the waters, and they're laying there. And Din wakes up, and we expected to have this conversation about, hey, did you see the mythosaur down there?
Yeah.
This big monster. And Bo's asking questions, and he's like, no, I woke up just now. I didn't see anything.
I thought it was kind of funny because he's like, I did it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you didn't. you got halfway in and you fell in,
Yeah.
and then we're unconscious. So in this episode, when he's like, I did it. I've accomplished my goal. I was just kind of like, what do you remember?
Yeah. And I was wondering, like, how did he get unconscious?
Yeah.
Did he hit the ground that hard? I don't know. Didn't make sense.
He must have just blacked out, being dragged down so deep. But those helmets were supposed to be pressurized, so
Yeah.
I didn't get it. Like, why is it that he has no memory of what happened?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the big question is, why didn't Bo-Katan mention the mythosaur? Why did she keep it a secret throughout the rest of the show, or this episode at least? What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
I have no idea. I was wondering the same thing, because she kept asking him, and then it was like, oh, never mind, nothing. And so I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, we had some theories in the last episode, and that I think this kind of plays into what we talked about a little bit. I learned, I knew that the whole story of the origin was the conquering of the mythosaur, right? And so she obviously still has that goal of wanting to be back a leader. That's why she wanted to get the Darksaber to begin with. So I think this just kind of plays right into that and that she now sees another path to be able to do that.
Okay.
It may not be the Darksaber anymore, but maybe now this is not only will get her there, but it has a greater weight or meaning to it, because there's a history from the original from the original Mandalorian. And if she's able to go back and tame and train and get, I don't think her plan was to like group all kind of what happens in the end. We'll talk about that later. I think that could just kind of like, well, this falls right into my plan. But I do think she looks at this as an opportunity to get to unite the Mandalorians. I want to say from one of the trailers, there's a line she says where she talks about how, where she kind of has this monologue and talks about the Mandalorians and how they're spread all over, and how he was part of the one clan, and so I think that's all going to play into it.
Yeah, because the taming of the mythosaur by the original Mandalorian happened before the Darksaber.
Yeah.
So it was like the original sign of, or symbol of, rulership, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think that's what I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I think that's her play.
She's just like filing it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we were disappointed in not kind of having this conversation between her and Din, but I'm sure it'll come up at some point.
Yeah.
Right. So they're able to leave and get back on to their ship. And as they head back to Bo-Katan's castle, they're attacked on the way by some TIE fighters. And that's kind of the exciting part of the episode is this aerial battle. Pretty sweet. I don't think we've seen anything that intense in Star Wars, in live action Star Wars until now.
Yeah, seeing that happen and close to the surface, right? Not in space.
Yeah.
It gave it a whole new perspective.
Right.
That we to see that background flying by the ships like that. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of some of those scenes where they're dipping the wing into the water. And it's pretty cool, winding through those canyons and everything.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. So, pretty intense sequence there. Din, they realize they got to get 2 ships up in the air, so Din is able to jump out, fly down, get his ship, and then they have to combat these TIE fighters that are chasing them. They get rid of them, but then more come, and she's saying like, this is way more ships than we thought there was going to be, that there should be.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a good question. Where do they come from? Why are they here at this moment? Like, were they waiting for her to, or, I don't know. Where do they come from and why?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because she'd been there for quite a while, right?
Yeah. By herself.
With no interruption. And so then they all just show up right at that time. It's a good question.
Is someone monitoring them? Did they set like sensors in the city so if the Mandalorians come back, they know they got to take care of them so they can keep that mystique of this place is poisoned and it's cursed, so don't go back.
Her comment or what she says, I think, is these are way more than from some warlord, right?
Yeah.
Some like buddy who's kind of where these fighters are become like mercenaries, like they're from the Empire, right? So I think everyone's thought process would be like, okay, is this Moff Gideon, or is this?
It's got to be someone else,
or who we've kind of danced around, who we think might be coming later on in the series. So yeah, and not just TIE fighters, but TIE bombers. Yeah.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Siri's listening in. Yeah. Moff Gideon's in prison, right, on Coruscant or somewhere in the
Well, supposedly.
Yeah. Then later in the show, they talk a little bit about that and the rumors about what happened with Moff Gideon and where he is. So he's supposed to be in prison, locked up.
Yeah, but he seems to have an influence outside of that prison.
Yeah. Well, obviously they say that he escaped. All right, and then someone's like, "Oh no, he got mind flared," and that's a cover story. Because the Republic doesn't want people knowing that they're scrambling people's brains. So it's kind of like, ooh, which is an interesting topic. Is the Republic really doing stuff like that?
Yeah, and I think that's the next part of the story, right? Bo-Katan and the Mandalorian and everybody are able to jump into hyperspace. We don't know where they're going at this time, but Mando's like, follow me, I got a place. So they leave, and then it jumps to Coruscant. And we get into see how the New Republic is working or not working. And I think we all had this idea that, okay, after Return of the Jedi, they establish a government. It's awesome. Everyone's happy and no problems.
Yeah.
Right. And in this episode, we see that's not necessarily the case. So I did like to see Coruscant again. That was cool. We saw it a little bit in Andor, but that was, years before on the timeline, pre-episode 4 in Andor. But here we got New Republic Coruscant. And it starts off with this Dr. Pershing. He's given a speech. I guess he just got out of the what do they call that? Where they recondition them and kind of readjust their thinking so they're not Imperials anymore. They're
Right.
New Republicans. And he's talking about his work, how he was able to take the best of DNA from two people and combine them into one and create, this perfect clone or this ideal clone. And they did, I think they did mention the M count, or maybe I'm just reading into it, but that's what I got. They were able to kind of, take the M count, the midichlorians from one and add it to another who didn't have it before. So that kind of leads us to think, well, that's why they wanted Grogu.
Yeah.
Just to get the DNA stuff from him. So
Yeah.
what did you guys think about his speech? Did it make sense? Did you like, oh, that's how we get Snoke, basically?
Yeah, I don't know about the Snoke tie-in, but I know that's kind of what the common
That's the theory. Yeah.
theory is eventually it leads to something to that effect, and eventually the Emperor, right? But as far as him and going through the Adjustment Bureau, that old movie, yeah, I got it. I it made me wonder. So was he like captured? Was he kidnapped? Was he forced? Because it seemed like his goal was one thing, and it sounds like someone saw that that purpose could be used for something different, and that he wasn't really trying to clone, an individual or person. It was just to clone organs.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the speech, and I believe that was his intent. The question I had then is how did he end up in the situation that he was in, and was he really on board to do it, or was it more like he was being forced to do it?
Yeah. Well, I think when we've seen him in the past, he's always seemed pretty reluctant, it seemed like, and kind of a victim of circumstance or whatever. But I don't know. I think the whole Adjustment Bureau thing you mentioned is like, it didn't seem like they got adjusted too much. I was like surprised that all these ex-Empire folks, they just let them hang out together and talk about the good old days. That seems like a recipe for disaster or whatever. But
get together and conspire. Like, all right, well, we're all together.
What do you miss about the Empire?
Biscuits, cookies. Yeah, that's a good
really
point.
Good fitting uniforms.
Yeah. So I think, they did miss that life to some degree. They realized, I think all along, most of them kind of knew, hey, this is bad stuff. This isn't the best thing to do. But, hey, we're getting paid, and this is, what we do. And so when they had the chance to reform, I think most of them were fine with it.
Yeah.
Had to be able to clear their consciousness. And, but it seems like one of them, this communications officer, wasn't totally bought into reforming herself. When we see her for the first time, I recognize her. Oh, it's that one girl from the last season.
Yeah.
And when they start interacting with each other, how did you perceive her character at that point?
So for me, this section of the show was a little bit of a rough watch.
Yeah.
I mean, neither of those two, were actors that could anchor a show, and just watching them interact and everything was that wasn't my favorite part.
Yeah, it was awkward. They did not have chemistry.
40 minutes of B-reel.
Yeah.
I mean, there were those typical kind of tropes that you see, right? The camera takes, the pauses, the way she looks around when they're like, oh, I didn't know I'd ever see someone here from Moff Gideon's ship. And it's like, you were on Moff Gideon's ship? He's like, I'm trying not to. Yeah, I mean, just kind of like, and the music, you're like, okay, she's obviously up to no good.
Yeah.
So you were suspicious from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy-handed, right?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty obvious they were making it look like she's not being 100% forthright. And the question I had was how did she get there? Because I mean, when they end up on Moff Gideon's ship and they capture him, it seems like seemed like the ship was like empty.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good point.
where was she? Was she captured as part of that whole operation when they crashed into the ship? And then if so, that would make sense. But it almost seems like maybe she maybe got there another way. Like
Yeah.
she didn't get captured, but maybe she turned herself in. Or I don't know.
Or, yeah, or I mean, you know, in this stage of everything, is there a lot of corruption in the New Republic still, or is there? And you know, I don't know. It felt a little bit like she was a bit of a plant or something.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Because she did have her own agenda. She was playing the good New Republic citizen, but then she was also pretending to be someone who she wasn't, to be able to lure Pershing into stealing stuff to get himself caught. So she was also a plant within a plant, and she also seems like she's working with Moff Gideon still.
Yeah, that's right. And like she's just like a double spy, right?
Yeah.
You know, she's, you know, when the doorbell rings and there's the one thing he said he really missed was sitting at the door. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I wonder who that's from.
I wonder how that got there and who that's from. I thought it was pretty obvious that she was trying to, you know, get his trust, and so that she could, you know, get him to continue his work, because it seems like that was the goal always, was for the work that was the most important. Now, watching them take a stroll, sucking on glowing
At least,
pops.
at least it's stick food, right?
Yeah.
Even in other, you know,
Yeah, or whatever they were.
whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, what did you think of the top of the highest peak, just barely sticking up out of the ground? So Coruscant is obviously completely covered, but is the peak literally only that high, or is like Coruscant just really high off the ground?
Yeah.
I think it's like, really
Super
high off the ground.
Yeah,
Like, it shows you how tall the buildings are. Because there is some literature, books, maybe comics, that they go down far enough, they get to the earth, but it's so far down there, no one lives there because it's super dark. It's like a cave, basically. And there's wild beasts and stuff.
but no one
lives down there.
And so
it's
the
so far.
city, the entire city, is built like up above that, really, really high. But is it like on pillars, or is it just all those walkways are just attached to buildings, and really the only thing that goes down to the ground are the buildings?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever specifically defined, but that's the implication, is that they just build on top of buildings, make them higher and higher, and support them somehow.
And what did he say? There's trillions of people on that planet.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That would be a hike I could do, though.
Yeah. Could hike that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's earning his trust. They're joking around. Even that was forced, right? When he goes to reach and she tricked him and they laugh. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is worse than Anakin and Padme.
It was funny to see two Empire villains on a date.
Yeah.
Though, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're just like us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awkward moment.
Yeah. And how much time do you think had passed since they met? I get in the show, it's at least 3-4 days, maybe a week.
Yeah.
But for him to like do a complete 180, he's a smart guy, you know, he's analytical and supposedly and all that. He's a scientist. He seemed to fall for stuff pretty quick.
Well, let's think about this. This is a good question. Because we heard that Grogu was with Luke for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So, and that happened at the end of season 2, and then we got a few episodes during Book of Boba Fett. So, has Pershing been going through this adjustment phase for 2 years now?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably, right? And if that's the case, the fact that he's speaking, in that theater, makes it seem like he had finally, after all this time, was finally kind of like rehabilitated and gotten to that point. And then, of course, they show her obviously there to listen to him. Mm-hmm. So from
She'd
the very
already been there.
yeah, she must have. So the question is she's probably been there for a while too, watching him and looking for this opportunity.
Yeah, she had been there long enough to be able to be a double agent, to get into the good graces of this other group,
the Republic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the police, basically.
Yeah. So was she waiting for Pershing to show up, or did she just recognize this opportunity and be like, hey, let's do this? Or what's her agenda, I guess? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and then I think as we get to what happens at the end, whatever comes of that, I guess, I mean, that'll tell us, I think, but it certainly seems like she's there on a mission for him, and it's not a matter of circumstance, you know?
Yeah, so let's get to that part where she gains his trust. They decide to go. He's finally sick of just, going through the motions. He wants to go back to his work. So that makes me think it's been a couple months to get into the monotony and have that job that he has. And he's just like, the good old days when I could do experiments and stuff. And so some time has passed.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's willing to go for it, to risk it all after all this time in the rehabilitation center. So they go, he talks to her, hey, let's go get the laptop, the information, the stuff from the Star Destroyer. So they go and they get on that train. There's a whole train sequence this was like the pinnacle of boredom for me. It was supposed to be this exciting thing, but they're going through the slow chase through the cars, train cars, and the robots following them.
Yeah.
And then they jump off and
magically land on some mattresses.
Yeah, luckily land on a soft spot. Yeah. They're fine.
And that was it was going pretty fast.
Yeah.
It looked like.
I wouldn't jump off.
No.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, she knew they were there because she's done it before, right?
Yeah.
Well, the first time she
didn't get caught.
The first time she did it, she didn't know they were there, right? So, if she's done this multiple times, like, how do you think I got the biscuits? I don't know. She's obviously been sneaking out, but so we find out later, obviously, she probably wasn't sneaking out. She was allowed.
Yeah,
this is all
the pass or whatever.
Yeah, she was all allowed in all 9 years. But yeah, that part where they're walking through the train, I thought it was cool. The characters you see on the train,
right?
And there were some cool scenes there that reminded me of other movies we've seen.
Okay,
I thought that was cool.
Okay, so you liked it.
I really liked. I liked when he would have to report to that android, or the droid, and answer those questions. That kind of reminded me of Blade Runner and the whole Voight Comp test, and I thought that was kind of interesting, and some of those other things that they showed. Them riding on the train, though it was supposed to be tense, but it was pretty anticlimactic, I think. Yeah, and then. There was no music.
Yeah, that might have been it too. It was just kind of watching them.
Yeah,
no tension. Supposed to be, but there wasn't for me.
Like someone turned the soundtrack off. And forgot to push play when they recorded it or something.
Yeah. So they make their way to the Star Destroyer. They get all the equipment. We see these cool little rat thingies. They're light up eyes, feeding off all the metal. It looks like, or the scrap there. And they make their way out, and they're busted. The New Republic cops are there, and this is where we find out that she's a double agent. And so she did all this work to convince him, hey, you should go, do what you want to do and get this stuff. And then she turned him in at the end. So it does seem targeted. There is an agenda towards him specifically, at least at this moment. And maybe it's a matter of you said earlier, Blake, that Moff Gideon escaped. That it was unclear if he escaped or if he hadn't. I didn't catch that part. Or I missed it.
It's when they kind of get together with the group. They're drinking and they just start to say, "Well, I heard Moff Gideon escaped," and then somebody said he was mind flayed and
mind flared. Yeah. So when Pershing shows up at the housing complex, and which was weird because if he's been there, they're all like talking to him like, "Hey, welcome. We've never met you before."
Well, that was his first time there.
So, but he had to have been. So, was he in some sort of like rehabilitation center up until that point? And then
halfway house or something.
So he gets there and they introduce themselves, and while they're sitting at the table, and he's like, "I didn't think I'd see anyone from Moff Gideon here." Then the other two guys are like, "You know what? I heard he escaped on his way to prison," and the other guy says, "I heard that's a cover story that the Republic put him in a mind flare and fried his brain," which we're like,
mind flayed him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that changes things a bit. So if he escaped,
come on, Nate.
You all right there?
Someone's calling.
Oh, okay. If he escaped, that means he's able to communicate with his agents on the inside, and maybe she's one of them. I imagine she's an agent for him, regardless if he's in prison or not. That's my take. And she's acting as an agent for the Republic to erase the stuff, like tie up loose ends, is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And Dr. Pershing is a loose end. But that would mean that they don't need him anymore. So they have the information, the research that they need to do whatever they were doing, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of questions.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it does seem, I'm really curious as to what the motivation is, because it seems like this was a lot of trouble and a lot of work to tie up a loose end. And so I'm kind of thinking of is it mind flay? Is that what they call it? I'm trying to figure out what that's going to mean, and if they're still trying to. Yeah, I mean, he was a pretty important scientist. There wasn't another one to do the work he was doing, and so how does that all fit in? Do they, as part of that process, is some of that knowledge retained or something? And I don't know. What's the long game there? I don't know.
Yeah, does the mind flayer kill him? To make him brain dead so he can't think anymore, or is it just kind of bring him back in line and he's like a zombie? You're like, "Yes, sir, I'll do whatever he wants," or
I think my completely guessed opinion is the low setting, it does the it kind of
resets him.
Yeah, it's kind of like electric shock therapy, and
but when you turn it up to 11,
but when you turn it to completely scrambles your brain and you become completely, you don't even remember your name. And I think that's what she's trying to do. I think she's trying to I think she's trying to basically cover their tracks, and they don't want him sharing anything of the things that he's been doing for the Empire.
Yeah.
So I think that's the purpose, is
to not pass that information on to the Republic.
Yeah, exactly what he was doing for the Empire. They don't want that getting out. So I think that was her goal, is to completely scramble his brain and turn him into mush.
Yeah.
But you would think if this really was 2 years, I mean, they had plenty of time. I don't know. They had plenty of time to get what they needed or wanted from him. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah. So this part of the episodes was sandwiched in between some pretty cool action sequences and important information regarding the culture of Mandalore, which this season seems to be addressing. So for them to take time away from this main storyline of Bo and Din to show us this information, it's got to be important, right? Later on in the season. Seems like it would be something integral that comes up later. So I'm hoping there's a payoff to this. I mean, it wasn't a bad part of the episode. Like, a lot of people really didn't like it. It was interesting, and I recognized the information was important, but it wasn't that exciting to watch, really.
Yeah.
So
I think Blake thought, a little bit like that, right?
I did. I did not like the middle 45 minutes of this one.
Yeah. And I actually didn't mind it. I didn't hate it. I just was like disappointed that I wasn't getting more of what I saw in the beginning and what we end up seeing at the end. And I think it was interesting to have this episode, but why couldn't have they like maybe interlaced it with other scenes so we could, and they switch back and forth between the two. So we've got some like, Pershing and some, storyline plots there, but then let's see what's going on with the Mandalorian and what's going on there.
Yeah,
kind of a thing.
Yeah. And it does. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, or at least more of the dating.
More dates.
More strolls through the park.
More strolls. Eating weird glow-in-the-dark food.
Yeah.
I really want to try one of those.
Maybe there was a whole sex scene they cut out because it was just too much.
Maybe. It was a kid's show, guys.
Yeah. Maybe they did date. So, but it leads us to believe that this stuff is happening at the same time as the main storyline, right? They're going on at the same time, right?
Yeah. It's I was like, man, that beginning was like, you start off the beginning and you're like, wow, this is gonna be awesome, and then it's just like, wow, and it just like put the brakes on the whole episode, and then you're like, it just turns into this slow, and then all of a sudden the last 5 minutes you're like, all right, we're back, and then it ends and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, and even when they're talking about, what did you miss about the Empire? The biscuits. Like, even that's like the most boring thing you could come up with.
Yeah.
I really like those yellow biscuits. And then she's like, I like the red ones or something like that.
Yeah, there's different flavors. Okay. Well, that's good.
It reminded me of Lord of the Rings and the elven wafers things. Oh, these are great.
Yeah. So a lot of people are saying that, the New Republic isn't as squeaky clean as we thought they were.
Yeah.
What leads us to believe that?
Well,
what's the big disappointment?
I think it was kind of the messing with people's minds and things like that. That's a little bit dirty, and
even if it's just the Imperials who are bad people, that's still wrong.
I mean, it just isn't squeaky clean. You know what I mean? It's something like, that sounds like an Empire kind of thing.
Yeah.
Guantanamo Bay stuff.
Even though they try to like not gloss, but kind of like candy, like, well, we do this, but it's like at the lowest level. There's too much of that kind of stuff in real human history that like it comes too close to comfort, and you hear stories of back in psychiatric hospitals where they do
shock therapy
and things like that, and lobotomies, stick a thing up your nose and scramble your brain. And I think that this just hit a little too close to home, because a lot of people know that there's actually stuff like that did happen, and it was horrible. So this kind of thing is like, even though they try to like play it down, like, oh, it's like listening to like classical music with it's like what subliminal, it's like a subliminal message. You just hear music and you hear a light buzzing, and you won't forget anything, you'll still be you.
It was funny that they turned the machine on and then just like, all right, let's head out, and they were just going to leave it running. I don't even leave my TV on if I'm leaving the house.
With him like handcuffed to the table. Like, what if that guy like fell asleep or something? There's got to be like, like, do you have an alarm on or something?
Yeah. And there was the in-universe joke when he tells the Admiral Akbar people, it's a trap.
I caught that.
She trapped me or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
I love that. That was funny.
But so it leads us to believe that even the worst type of people, the Imperials, deserve mercy, deserve compassion, or don't deserve to die, at least, right? Is that what we're saying here?
And I don't really, again, as we talked about earlier, I think he was kind of a prisoner. I don't really think he was a part of the Empire, as far as that his agenda wasn't the same as the Empire's agenda. I think he was kind of like an indentured servant.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So maybe...
But Moff Gideon wasn't, and he wasn't killed.
Well, that's just it. We don't know what happened to him because we've got two stories. He escaped, and then the other one's like, oh no, they just told you he escaped. They really fried his brain. I don't think that happened. I think he escaped.
Okay. All right. So a lot of interesting questions for a boring episode. Boring part of the episode.
Yeah, we talked about it for quite a while.
I know. It's been 40 minutes. But so then we get back to the action. So we jump back to Din and Bo, and their hyperspace destination was Lake Powell, or that planet that they went to. And they land, and they are met by Paz Vizsla, the big dude.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you can't come in here. You're not, you're an apostate. But he tells them, hey, we bathed in the waters of Mandalore, and I have proof. So they bring him in, both of them in, to talk to the armorer, who seems to be the clan leader, basically, of this group, right?
Yeah.
They tell her what happened. They give her the vial of water from the pool. She dumps it into the regular water and sees that it's true. So she
glistens blue.
Yeah, she forgives them of their sins, both of them, both Bo Katan and Din Djarin.
Yeah, welcome them back to the clan.
Yeah. How do you feel like
the circle of trust?
Yeah. How do you feel there? Seems like most of the people welcome them back pretty well, but Paz Vizsla didn't seem too excited.
Yeah,
especially with Bo Katan being back.
Well, there's a history, right, between his
clan,
his family, and hers, right? Mm-hmm. Is the fact that her clan had been the leader, but prior to them, his family basically were the leaders, right? Mm-hmm. And they deposed
her sister and killed her. Even though Maul did it, they were part of that group.
Yeah. So there's some tension there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think she knows that? Mm-hmm. Do you think she knows?
She was alive during all that.
But does she know him? Does she that's Paz Vizsla?
That's a good question, because he's not mentioned in the Clone Wars. I think it's his dad or maybe Grandpa is. Yeah. But as close as they all are, it seems like she would know him.
Yeah, she may know of him, but I don't know. I wonder if she even knows that's who he is. Like, because I don't think she really knows any of them very, like, by name. She wouldn't go, oh, you're so and so, and you're so and so. I don't even think she even knows who the armorer is.
The armorer knew who she was.
She knows the history of the family.
Well, she called her Bo Katan.
She knows them because of how the role that they played in the history. But so you're saying they haven't met until now? I don't think so. No.
Mm-hmm. It could be, because there's no evidence or story showing that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't think Bo Katan knows anything about that clan or that group or who they are. As personally, I'm sure they'll be like, oh, I know of your group. I know what your group believes, but I don't think she knows any of them on a personal level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's good. It's a good thing that I hope they address.
Yeah.
I do think that Paz Vizsla will make a play for the Darksaber, because as we saw in the Book of Boba Fett, there was that duel between him and Din.
He wants it.
And now it's back within his reach.
It was his family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting how this could play out, because maybe he challenges Din and wins, but then Bo Katan challenges him and wins, and then now she's the ruler.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that, where multiple people are vying for it, and we see it play out.
So does Din have it right now, or does Bo Katan have it?
He has it.
I think it's Din's. I don't think the thing that we talked about last time about her picking it up and defeating that.
Well, she gave it back to him.
Yeah. I don't think that meant anything.
Yeah.
And-
It could. I thought it could have, but apparently it didn't. So.
Or him losing to that thing. It didn't mean that alien now is the leader of the Mandalorians. Yeah.
Okay.
But she definitely can wield it a lot better than he can. So, but that's a good point. But again, and maybe he does, and then she shows up with the mythosaur.
Yeah.
Or maybe they all go to Mandalore to be like, let's move the coven to Mandalore and start rebuilding and call the people back, and they do, and they go down to the waters, and she comes climbing out of on riding the back of the mythosaur, and they're all like, oh
Yeah.
look out.
Yep.
I think when the mythosaur is brought back into the story, I think it'll be some type of battle against the Empire, though. I think it'll be something more her leading the Mandalorians versus I don't know, regaining leadership of them or something.
Yeah, that makes more sense. You're probably right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll see them go back to Mandalore. I think that's the purpose of this season, is to build up the Mandalorians again on their planet. So,
man, they must have a really hard time with driver's licenses
yeah.
down there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, please take off your helmet.
Nope.
This is not the way.
I wonder if that whole thing's going to go by the wayside at some point.
Do ya?
With taking off the helmet, because that just seems super awkward.
But then it's just going to create that, these factions again, with some that are like these zealots almost, if you will, the Watch, and the way they follow the creed, and then other groups, and how much is too much, and where do you draw the line?
Well, if the armor is defeated and she's no longer in power to enforce the creed, because it seems like mostly her deal.
Yeah.
So, and if she's defeated or killed even, and Bo-Katan's the leader, she's going to overturn it.
Yeah.
She doesn't care about that.
So I bet you there does end up kind of becoming maybe some sort of clash, but then the Empire shows up, whoever has all those TIE fighters will show up, and then they'll have to unite to defeat the Empire, like you said.
Yeah.
And then she'll come out
on the beast,
and everyone will bow down to her, and and the season will end. The end. So I just spoiled it for everybody.
Yeah. Sorry. Spoilers.
No need to watch.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
So, all right. Final thoughts on this episode.
Well, I thought we would spend the whole season of him getting to Mandalore, and then the final episode would be he finally makes it and he finally gets redeemed. So the fact that that's already happened tells me there's a lot more to this season, because I thought there would be, like the past, a lot of MacGuffins, a lot of like side quests, and then we'd get to the meat of it at the end. But we've already got there, and so I'm excited to see where this goes, because for that very reason.
I'm just glad I got to hear you say MacGuffin. I don't even know.
Yeah, there's only 5 episodes left. All right, I shouldn't say only 5, because there's 8 per season usually.
Yeah.
So that's not even halfway over yet. So it's good. We're already into the good stuff.
Yeah. What do you think, Blake?
Yeah, no, I like you. I was thinking the same thing. I thought that this would all be the journey of him redeeming himself. And so, for me, I think in season 2, I kind of knew where it was going throughout the whole season. And like you say, there were just little side trips along the way of where you knew you were going. And this season, now that preconception's kind of gone. And so, I don't know. I'm excited that there's going to be a lot of things I wasn't expecting. I don't know what's coming next. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about what we think is going to happen, but there's still a lot of story. If that is what happens, there's still a lot of story to tell before that happens.
Yeah. Well, and boring as it was, there's obviously a pretty big story around the scientist and what's happening there with them, and
The cloning stuff.
the cloning stuff, and Moff Gideon kind of re-entering the story. So yeah, I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah. And I like it. I like not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
That's all speculation, but we really don't know. It could be completely different. So that's good.
I kind of think it will be. Those are the episodes and the shows you like, is when you think you know you think you can. It's pretty predictable, and it's not even anything close to that.
Yeah.
I kind of hope it becomes a multiverse kind of thing. You know,
They go back in
I know how
time.
you like multiverses. So
They go back in time and kill the Emperor
there you go.
before episode 6.
The baby Hitler theory.
Yeah. And then they come back to normal time and it Luke's the Emperor.
I think Djarin, someone's going to use the Force and shrink down to the size of a midichlorian.
Yeah. Go to the quantum verse.
Go to the midichlorian verse.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Just cancel us. Just
So those are our thoughts on this episode, and we will find out more tomorrow as the next episode drops. We'll see how accurate we are with our predictions. But thanks for joining us, guys. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like the video, helps us out. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a lot. So from the Credible Nerds, we'd like to thank you for watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.
see ya.
Good night, everyone.